Good evening and welcome to Imperial Lake's online Food for Thought, the latest in our public event series exploring research at Imperial College London. My name is James Romero and I work in the public engagement team here at Imperial. This final Lake's Online week of 2020 will see a whole programme of events on the future of food and the current state of nutrition and dietary research science. We will be exploring how science is influencing and informing what we eat today and perhaps what we should be eating more of or less of, I guess, in the future. Tonight, we're going to be exploring the life and times, the career and day-to-day duties of one of our food-focused scientists. Jerusa Brignardello is a dietary scientist and nutritionist whose career has seen her take on a variety of roles, from making healthier crisps in her native Chile and working with the recently Nobel Prize-winning UN World Food Programme. Jerusa is now here at Imperial, carrying out some very important work looking for fingerprints of healthy and maybe less healthy diets in our human waste. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jerusa.
No, thank you, James, for having me here. It's an honor.
So during this talk, everyone, we're going to be discussing a wide variety of meaty subjects, from the potential of microbiome science to revolutionize personalized nutrition, through to how we tackle some of our immediate global health challenges through, I guess, more traditional interventions, food interventions and public health policy. Before I come to Jerusa with my first question, I did want to remind everyone watching at home that this is an interactive event. So please do send us your questions and thoughts. Some of my colleagues are working away in the background, monitoring the YouTube chat, and they'll be passing on your questions and interesting comments for me to read out and put to Jerusa for her reaction and thoughts. Just bear in mind, anyone who is posting, please do so respectful. Please do so respectfully. Just be respectful of our fellow viewers. We want to make this a really warm and inviting and friendly atmosphere to have what I think will be a really, really interesting conversation. So, if that's all understood, I'm going to come to you, Jerusa, with my first question of the evening. So I've given you a bit of an intro there, talked a little bit about your work, but I wondered when you're with friends in a restaurant, or when you're with family members who aren't scientists, who don't understand a huge amount about dietary science and nutrition and dietetics and metabolics and all of those other things we'll talk about in this event. What do you, when they ask you, so what are you up to, Jerusa? What are you doing for a living? What is your sort of general response to that question? How do you describe what you do?
Well, that is a good question. I have done a lot of things for a living, like back in Chile, I used to teach as a lecturer in the undergraduate. Then I moved to United Nations to work as a nutritional consultant. But now here in UK, I'm studying my PhD, so I'm a PhD researcher, and I'm paid for it by my sponsor back in Chile. So what I'm doing, basically, I'm trying to understand how different dietary patterns they can affect our health by the analysis of different fingerprints in our biofluids, like urine, feces, and blood. So really? I know that is not really common, and when you are talking about who in a dinner with your friends all the time, it's joke. It's a joke. It's 100% joke.
I imagine that sort of response leads to some follow-up questions from the people, which I think we're going to cover some of those follow-up questions throughout this event. So hopefully we'll recreate those conversations during this event. One thing I wanted to ask, because you mentioned a couple of the phrases there: dietitian, nutritionist, and I know that in the UK, some of the times those words get used. They get they get used, one or the other gets used, or they're and I think there might be some confusion about the difference between the two terms. So I wondered if, at the very outset, if we might be able to help us understand the difference between dietitians, nutritionists, and what those two different terms mean.
Yeah, definitely. I think that point is quite important. In my case, I studied dietetics and nutrition, right? I'm a dietitian by background, but something that you need to keep in mind that I haven't validated my degree in the HCPC, which is the Healthcare Professional Council, right? So under that umbrella, let's say I'm a nutritionist. Why? Because nutritionist is someone who can give you advice that they are evidence-based. In nutrition, there's a lot of myths around. But when you are talking with a nutritionist, It's someone who is going to tell you, you can do this because we have evidence that it proves that it's going to be helpful, okay? A nutritionist, it can be someone who has studied like something related to nutritional science or something related to biological science, you know. And here in UK, there's something really interesting because you can register like in a voluntary way in the association for nutrition, right? So that is super important. So when you are looking for a nutritionist, that means it's someone who is going to give you evidence-based advices, but at the same time, it's going to be someone who is going to guide you to have healthy eating habits. But on the other side of the coin, you have the dietitian, you know, and dietitians, they can be someone who has studied nutrition, who has studied biological science, you know, but at the same time, it has a postgraduate in nutrition, or it has like a master in nutrition and dietetics. But at the same time, you need to be registered by the Healthcare Profession Council, and you need to be registered under the British Dietetics Association. And the huge difference that you can find between dietitians and nutritionists, that the dietitians can assess you, can diagnose you, can treat you different conditions that they have, that they are related with dietary issues or nutritional issues. Like, to put it really, really clear, for example, you have someone in your family who has like a kidney problem. Okay, you cannot go to see a nutritionist. You have to go to see a dietitian, because the dietitian is going to be the person who is going to adjust your diet according to your nutritional requirements, you know, and so on, you know, because a kidney disease has some specific requirements. Or for example, if you have like a metabolic disease like a phenylketonuria, you know, where you cannot metabolize properly one amino acid, the dietitian is going to be the right person who is going to give you the right advice. So these are the big difference. So in my case, why I told you, okay, I'm a dietitian. Yes, I am a dietitian in Chile, but here I am not, because I haven't validated my degree. So if I will pretend to work as a dietitian, that it will be absolutely illegal. You know what I mean?
Right, okay.
So it's super important to keep that in mind, because sometimes people can be fooled a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. That's really useful. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about later on, we're going to talk about your day-to-day work that you're carrying out here at Imperial, but we're going to rewind the clock. We're going to go back in time a little bit and find out how you got into your career, where it all started, and where your career journey has taken you, that's ended up in our part of London working at Imperial. So apparently I understand that your interest in the science of food was quite evident at a young age, growing up in Chile. So can you tell us about some of the kitchen experiments you were carrying out as a youngster?
Yeah, indeed, like that. It was really, really, really long time ago. That it will be like around 1988, when I was 7 years old, because my mom at that time, it was diagnosed with hypertension. Okay. So the first approach that you have when you are diagnosed as a person with hypertension definitely is like the pills, you know, like and the diet. So we take our diet, but my mom, she started to eat a lot of vegetables, and she reduced the salt. So my mom, she started to prepare more vegetables for her. And to me, as a little girl, it was like, oh, my mom, she's ill. She will die. Like, I need to help her. So then I was really curious to learn how to cook. So then I started to have a lot of experiments in the kitchen. And then I realized that they were the microorganisms in the food, you know, especially in the bread. Like, I'm talking during the 80s, James. That is really long time ago. So during the 80s, the bread, it wasn't like now, like with a lot of preservatives, you know, to conserve the food. You know, the bread, like you keep it one day, and the day after it had fungus.
Yeah.
So after that, you know, I was obsessed to put like slide of bread in paper bags in the oven for 1 day, 2 days, and then I was obsessed to see all the fungus and yeast that they grow. So that, I think, marked my pathway as a dietitian, since I was interested to cook. Another time I made big messes in the kitchen.
I think we have can we show a picture of you in the kitchen as a young child, Jerusa? I think you sent us one here. Lovely. So
Yeah, and that is a lovely picture that I found the other day here in London, where I'm cooking with my grandma. Yeah, like she seems smaller than me, but I am over like a stool. So yeah, so we were kitchen in Valparaiso. I think that picture is from 1989 or something like that. So
lovely.
at a really early age, I started to create mess in my kitchen lab. But I can say probably that in the lab at Imperial, I am not so messy as I used to be when I was a little girl.
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't think that would pass health and safety and PPE based assessments for your lab bench. But no, it's a beautiful picture. We had a question from someone called Anushka, who's asking about your pathway after high school in terms of becoming a dietitian. So do you want to talk us through, what you studied at high school and how that led you into your university degrees and that type of thing?
Well, that happened really long time ago, 1988, when I finished my undergraduate. And, at that school, I was really good at physics and math. So I thought, okay, engineer is my pathway, definitely. Like, I'm going to study engineer. But I studied engineer. And then I realized, like, sorry, mom, sorry, dad, this is not my cup of tea. I'm not feeling happy here. And I want to move to another degree. So at that time, in the region where I come from, that is Valparaiso, in the University of Valparaiso, they opened a new professional career, and that it was nutrition and dietetics, to become a dietitian. So I was really interested to study first like physical activity, to become a teacher of physical activity for kids. But then I saw this one. And to me, it was like, come on, always I've been interested in this, why not? Let's give a try. So I took my A level, let's say, like the equivalent of the A levels from Chile, but to be clear here in the context of UK. And they were really good, and I applied to this new degree and I was immediately accepted. And look at me, 20 years later, I'm here.
At Valparaiso, the University of Valparaiso, you had a year working in the Chilean food industry, including a project I mentioned at the start around potato chips. Can you tell us a little bit about that project? So that was part of the degree, was it, to sort of have some time in industry?
Yeah, well, I want to just make clear that the undergraduate of nutrition and dietetics in my country, it takes 5 years.
Okay.
Just like where you are having just classes and different subjects, and then you have just 1 year of placement in different nutrition areas like pediatrics, adult clinical nutrition, and so on, public health. And then when I finished my degree, and then I got my diploma, and it was my graduation, my first job, it was in food industry. I work in one of the biggest food industry in my country that is called TMLUEC, that in Spanish it will be like TMLUC, like Corpora Tres Mortes and Lucchetti. And the thing is that I joined to the research and development team, right? Where I work alongside of food engineers, food scientists, and I was the only dietitian there. So at that time, it was a really interesting project that it came up, that it was a project to develop healthy tips, because we knew from different countries, and the trend at that time, it was like, you in the fatty acid, you have a type of fatty acid that they are not healthy, that they are called the trans fatty acids, that they have really bad effect on your health. They reduce your good cholesterol and they increase your bad cholesterol, so they are really bad. So we were looking, the tip by itself, due to the oil that it was using for the frying process, all the time they were trans fatty acids in the composition, the final composition of the product. So the thing that we did, we changed the fatty acid profile of the oils, and we add more oleic acid, that it has a higher point of fusion. So then it was a less production of trans fatty acid, that it was in line with the last requirement of the Pan American Health Organization regarding to trans fatty acid oils. And at the same time, that chips, they are super salty all the time. And that salt is something that it can lead you to some cardiovascular problem, like blood pressure problems and so on. So we take the salt, the normal salt that you use in the kitchen is sodium chloride, and we create a mix of salt with potassium chloride, right? Because at that time, one thing that I'm talking about, the evidence of 14 years ago, okay, the evidence say that if you combine this type of salts, it can have a positive effect on the blood pressure. So at the end, we modify, the oil in the frying process, and at the same time, we modify the salt to trying to make something that is not healthy, slightly healthier.
Slightly
Anyway,
healthier.
I recommend tips. If you can try it like celery and carrot with hummus, that is much better, guys.
Yeah, you weren't a magician. You can't make chips healthier, or a proper. You can't make chips a healthy product, but you can, like you said, make them slightly healthier. Because people are going to eat them, so you might as well, if you can, try and make them healthier. I guess that's a good thing.
Exactly. At least, like, okay, it's something that is not healthier, but at least it's a little bit.
It's interesting. I remember the trans fat sort of controversy, or I remember that being a big news topic here in the UK. So it's quite, at the time. So it's quite interesting that, to hear from the industry side. So that was, I mean, those types of projects you were working on there were quite sort of, I guess, practical in a sense. They were potentially having an immediate impact on what people were eating. But then when you went to the University of Chile to continue your studies, you focused on a master's that was, I guess, not quite as immediately able to address public health eating. It was more on a sort of a cutting edge area of science, which maybe had more future looking sort of prospectus, which is on the area of probiotics. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about probiotics, what that subject means, what that word means, I guess, and what interested you particularly about that topic.
Yeah, definitely. Well, something that you need to have clear in your mind when we are talking about probiotics, we are talking about some microorganisms. When they are consumed in the right doses or in the right proportion, they can confer a benefit to the host. That means, James, you are drinking like a little drink with milk and probiotics. Yep. Okay, you are the host, so you are drinking that, and that is going to confer you a benefit, right? So these microorganisms, they need to have some properties, like they need to be resistant to the acid of your stomach, because, in your stomach it's quite acid. It's like pH almost 2, and at the same time, they need to be resistant of the bile acid that you have in your small gut. That is like the basic thing. So yeah, I got interested on probiotics because, as I told you, since really early age, I started to be like interested in microbiology. Everything started in my kitchen with the yeast and the fungus. And then I realized that there were more things when I studied nutrition, because I had microbiology during one entire year. And then the year after, since I got the highest qualification of the course, I worked for 2 years as a student assistant. So I was in charge of the laboratory of microbiology, preparing everything for my fellow classmates, that they were like in different year, So I got really interested. And at the same time, while I have the opportunity to have my placement in clinical nutrition, I saw how patients, they improve their health when they got when they have administration of probiotic for some specific cases. Like, let's say, for example, when they have a diarrhea caused by Clostridium difficile, which is like a really nasty microorganism that I won't speak now about it. But I saw how people improve by just taking some specific probiotics. So then when I had the opportunity to study my thesis, it was in my undergraduate, it was about probiotics, and I tried to understand, basically, I evaluate the probiotic properties, of some commercial drinks, that they were used for some specific diseases that they were treated with antibiotics. This was a really simple question, and I worked around like 6 months on this in the lab. That it was my undergraduate thesis, right? And then when I had the opportunity to work in my master, definitely I looked at the microbiology and probiotics laboratory, where I had a great time, So then I think I have told you everything about probiotics, right? Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay. So then like I was really keen to work on probiotics. But then the person who was my advisor during my master told me, you won't work on probiotics now. You are going to work on microbiota. So I am really grateful about it anyway.
Steered you down a different path. Your
but something related, not the same, but related.
Okay, so we'll come on to that in a bit later, and we're in a second. We'll wind the clock forward a little bit further, and we'll talk about your work with the UN. But I wanted to just take. There was a couple of questions that have come in from people that I wanted to put to you. So we had a question from Alexandros, which I think this is more about your personal food choices or things that you like to eat. I'm not sure. It might be something more related to the importance of different food groups in nutrition. I don't know. But he says, if there was a huge disaster and all food sources were destroyed and you could only save one, which would you choose? So I don't know if that's from a personal taste or enjoyment of food perspective or from a nutritionist perspective, but feel free to give an answer.
If we will be like in an apocalypse and I need to choose just one food.
Yes.
That is a really good question. But, I will go probably, I'm trying to think with a food where I can have all the elements, like all the nutrients. I'm a Chilean.
And I was going to say, I was hoping you were going to answer with a traditional Chilean dish, because we have a picture of you with one, so maybe you could answer that.
Avocado.
There you go.
That is a perfect source of nutrients. You have like fatty acids, you have a lot of vitamins, you have minerals. Unfortunately, you don't have B12, but I'm pretty sure that I can get something in the sea or something, or I can get something else, or maybe it can be, it will be eggs and avocado. That is
eggs and avocado.
My selection.
Sounds like a very delicious East London breakfast. So yeah, I think that would work. That would work very well. We had also got a question from Dr. Vepper. I don't know if an actual doctor, but that's their username. Who picking up on when we were talking about fatty acids and asked what your views are on omega-7 supplementation and versus omega-3. Is that something that you've looked at or are aware of some of the literature on that?
Omega.
So he's asked about omega-7 supplementation. So omega-7 supplements and then compared to omega-3.
Well, it depends, because omega-7 is not something that I have read. Maybe it's omega-9 or omega-6, but something that is important when you are having a diet that is not rich in omega-3 sources. Like, for example, when you have someone who is vegan, it might be good to try to get a supplementation if your diet is having a lack of these nutrients, because in the case of omega-3, they are essential. We need to have like a good dose that you can obtain from different foods.
Okay. And we had a question from Raj. You talked about looking at various different drinks with sort of probiotic claims or probiotic benefits, potential probiotic benefits. Raj asked, how important is it to get the right probiotic? I think you wrote prebiotic, but probiotic. They all seem to be unique.
They are different things. Yeah. But assuming that is probiotic, well, there's a lot of research going on. Indeed, there are research going on here at Imperial about it. But I cannot say that we are getting the right one, because probiotics, basically, they are like some supplement that you consume and it helps to that is going to help that to your microbiota to grow, and we are assuming that the microbiota that is resident in your intestine, in your gut, this probiotics is going to help to grow the good one, the good microbes, in order to keep a balance, and also these are fermentable substrates for your microorganisms that they are located in your gut. So in order to know if you are getting the right one or not, I will close my mind just to tell you that this is the right one, because at the end we have trillions of microorganisms in our gut, and feed your microorganism just with one probiotic, maybe it's not a healthy option. So, and probiotic, you can find it in food, for example. So as long as you can consume diversity of food, you can feed your microbiota in a better way, right? Brilliant. I'm talking from the point of view that someone who is healthy.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if for the people watching, keep sending in your questions. We're going to have another time later on in the event, and we'll come back to a couple more. Though I want to move on to now your work with the UN World Food Program. So you were working as a consultant for this program. What, a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago, it won the Nobel Peace Prize, which is an amazing achievement. So you must have been, I know it's your former colleagues, but you must have been quite proud to hear that announcement. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your day-to-day work with the agency.
Yeah, I think we have a video for it.
Yep. If I'll just play that now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is like one of the videos of a World Food Program, because many people they don't know about World Food Program from United Nations. Most of the people, they know like WHO, they know like UNICEF, they know FAO, and so on. And when I told to people, no, I work for the World Food Program, where is that? World Food Program basically is the largest at United Nations agency, and they yearly support more than 100 million of people all over around the world, addressing hunger and promoting food security. So these guys, like they're like a modern heroes for me. Like they are the kind of Avengers of United Nations. And why? Because they are, imagine, like in Latin America, like we have problems of hunger, we have nutritional problems, and sometimes that's accessibility to reach different isolated places is really bad. Like imagine that these guys, they are distributing food in the Colombian jungle, which is quite dangerous, or they are distributing food in countries where they have political conflicts, or they are not really safe. For example, they are helping in Venezuela, or they are distributing food around Amazonia in Brazil, in Peruvian Amazonia, or Ecuadorian Amazonia. So this is like a really nice video because it shows that what WFP does. Like, indeed, to me, like when I watch this video, James, maybe you are going to laugh about myself, but I get like kind of goosebumps, because it's like really like, oh my God, these people, they are so passionate. When I work at United Nations, I can say that I've been quite lucky to work in different places. But if there's something that I can say from my ex-colleagues from United Nations, especially from WFP, this is the place where I have met the most passionate people in the world. Like more passionate than the football fans, something like that.
So you were based in Panama, is that correct? And I think we've got a picture of you with some of your colleagues.
Yeah.
Could you we'll see that. Could you tell us exactly an example of one project or what you were working on with some of that team?
Like, okay, just to clarify, in Panama, it's the Regional Bureau of Latin America and the Caribbean, right? So my daily day of work, it was every single day, it was different. But because you are providing technical assistance to different countries in Latin America, you are coordinating things, you are seeing budgets and so on. But I remember particularly one project where I have worked, where it was a project for a lipid-based product, for anemia and stunting prevention in kids between 6 to 24 months old, based in local ingredients. Okay, maybe the title sounds a little bit fancy, but it was a project that it was looking to create like a complementary food for kids that they have anemia and they were not growing accordingly to the chart, to the nutritional chart. Okay, so I'm based in local products, because something that you need to keep in mind when you are working on nutrition and you are doing nutritional interventions, right? You cannot bring something from another country and trying to implement that in one country, in another country. To put it clear, like lipid-based products, they are quite used in Africa, right? But in Africa, they are based in peanuts. And they try to use exactly the same product in Latin America. And unfortunately, it wasn't successful because peanut is not a common food in our daily diet, or at least in the diets of Central America, right? So yeah, so I designed this project, and we collect information, with local people and so on. So basically it was a product that it was with a similar dietary composition as the composition that we got from the African product, but based in ingredients that they were 100% from Latinos, okay, Latinos ingredient, let's say, right? So it was based in pulses, some oil, and also we have a new approach at that time that it was based on science. I mean, 2013, 7 years ago, that it was like a new research that they say that when kids, they are undernourished, right, and they are stunted, their microbiota, it has a lack of diversity. So in that project, when we designed this product, we include the like a symbiotic approach. I mean, the probiotics, and the probiotics, in order to improve a little bit more the microbiome of those kids that they were undernourished back that time. And this project is supposed to be implemented in Nicaragua. So I worked on that project around 6 months, and they moved me to another projects around Latin America. But yes, so it was a really nice experience to work there. I met amazing people, and I had the opportunity to travel around Latin America and know more about my culture, as a Latina, because regardless that we speak Spanish, believe me, we are totally different.
And that's quite interesting because it links to a question that we had from Kirthika, which is not just about sort of nationality, but around the appropriateness of an intervention or of a food product amongst a particular group of people, an ethnicity or a region. So that example you gave in Panama, not only was it looking at addressing a microbiome diversity issue, for example, but it also used products that were very familiar to local people and sustainable. So Kathika asked, is there a difference in the approach when considering diets or dietary interventions for different groups, different ethnicities, different regions? So I assume you would say yes, but I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, that is a really good question. I'm really happy that someone bringing here that question, because there are many experiences in Latin America that where nutritional intervention, they have been quite successful, and there are books and a lot of lessons learned about some nutritional intervention. But something that you need to bear in mind, that you need to have the context of the country where you are going to work on, right? Because imagine, like in my country is a really long country, like 4,300 kilometers long, from the north to the south. People from the north of Chile, they have different dietary patterns compared to the people that they live in Patagonia. They don't have the same food accessibility. They don't have the same dietary habits. Or even if you compare like with people from Peru, people from Chile, we eat totally different. But I need to recognize that the Peruvian food is so delicious, but we eat totally different. So when you are going to have a nutritional intervention, you need to consider their local habits. Otherwise, your nutritional intervention, it won't be successful. And not just only the local habits, a lot of factors like the political background, like the culture around, a lot of things you need to consider.
We had a question. So this isn't necessarily, it's more of a trend in diet that is emerging in the UK, in the US and other places like that, around sort of veganism and vegetarianism. How does that, in terms of a food intervention policy, so someone's asked here, Laurie's asked about whether veganism is a healthy alternative. As a sort of a dietitian, how does that sort of, what's your response to that, and how do you factor that into sort of public health dietary recommendations?
Yeah. Laura was the person who asked?
Yes.
Okay, Laura, hi. That is a really nice question indeed. Like, I will give you my opinion as a Jerusa dietitian from Chile, but that is not the real, maybe that is not the true. But I truly believe that when someone is vegan, that person, it needs to be seen by a nutritionist. Why? Because in my clinical practice, when I live in Chile, I used to see a lot of vegans, and they think most of the time, because just they are eating vegetables and not animal products. They are eating in a really good manner, and okay, that is fine, because there are ethical things behind. They are the respect of the animals, and you are taking care of your planet, and it's something that you need to respect, But guys, there are nutrients that you won't get from your diet, especially from B12 vitamin. So trying to be seen by someone who can help you monitor your B12 vitamin each 6 months or once a year. Speak with your GP about it, because it's a serious matter. Because then if you have a deficiency of vitamin B12, it can be really, really dangerous, right? So in terms of nutritional recommendations at the public health level, it depends of every single country. So far as I know, I'm not sure if UK have implemented this kind of recommendations in the public health recommendations. I might be wrong, but I think they haven't implemented. But I know really well the reality of my country in Chile. And for example, in some program schools, in some school feeding programs, they have implemented some vegetarian options, which are really good, because when you are giving foods, when you are giving a scholar food programs, when you are giving food at school, most of the time it's not because you want to feed in the kids. It is because the food that you are giving them is the only food that they are going to have during the day, So imagine if you have vegetarian kids or vegetarian teenagers, and they are not eating at the school because they are not a vegetarian option, and that is the only food that you are providing them. So from the public health point of view, is something that you might take in consideration at some point. For example, it should be created some guidelines for health professionals, because I have the feeling that sometimes people, they are not really updated about it. They think, oh yeah, but you are not eating meat, that is really bad for your health. Oh yeah, but I can replace that with other food, No, that is not possible. And I have seen that indeed, even in my family, because my brother, he has been vegan for more than 15 years.
All right.
But the thing is that he received the right support, the dietitian system, and also like he has been responsible with his supplementation through the years. So definitely, Laura, it should be included, But luckily here in UK, you have a really good vegan organization. I think it's the Vegan Society, and also something that I will recommend for vegans. If you are watching this, please get help by someone who is trusty, because there's a lot of influencers on social media, but I'm not sure if those influencers, they are going to have the proper qualifications to give you a proper advice that it can be helpful for your health.
I would also say that we've got, so tomorrow's event in our sort of Food for Thought Lates online series is a look at vegetarianism and veganism and the science behind those. And we have a fellow dietitian from Imperial who's going to be talking specifically about that issue. So definitely tune in tomorrow for that event, and we'll explore that subject in a lot more detail. Jerusa, I wanted to, so we've covered quite a lot of your work in sort of, I guess, large-scale public health interventions, looking at the food industry and supplements or sort of food stuff that can be given to people at a sort of a mass public level. But in terms of your career, if we're winding the clock forward again, a few years ago, you successfully applied for a PhD program here at Imperial, and it was returning to your academic area of interest, returning again to metabolics, so this sort of cutting edge area of science. Can you tell us a little bit about what metabolics means? What are you specifically, were you brought in to look at when you came into Imperial? And I think we've got a picture of your lab where you work, so maybe we can show that up as you're talking about your career. Now you're here with us at Imperial.
Yeah, well, I apply. Yeah, here I am in the lab of the computational system biology division, but now it have changed the name. But okay, we can access to that lab. That is the LCMS laboratory, the liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry. I am with one of my best friends of the PhD, my PhD sister, Adesola Velo, Dr. Adesola, because she got her PhD this year, like a couple of months ago. And we were working and checking data from some specific metabolite, bile acids. But yes, taking your question, I applied successfully in 2015 to Imperial College, because after my period at United Nations, then it was like, like I really want to go for a PhD. And I really like this area of metabolomics. I remember the first time when I heard about it, it was in 2008, because I was reading a magazine that is called Scientific American. And it was an article of one of the guys who coined the term of metabolomics, that's called Jeremy Nicholson. And I got amazed when he said that, oh, now we are in the era where we can evaluate the metabolites in your human fluids. And at that time I was working on microbiology, with fecal samples. And for me, it was like, oh, this is so cool. I really want to do that. But I was in Chile, and it was really far away for me, to come from Chile to UK. It was almost impossible in some way, But then, the life sometimes show you that you need to move outside of your comfort zone. First, it was United Nations, and then Imperial College, and there you go. So what I'm doing on my PhD, basically, I'm trying to understand how different dietary patterns how the different dietary patterns, they can influence your metabolism, right? So I'm working with vegans, I'm working with omnivores, and at the same time, I'm working with another clinical trial where people, they consume really healthy diet, and diets that they were not healthy. So we are evaluating the different biofluids of these subjects. We are evaluating fecal samples, we are evaluating urine. Well, we have evaluated, because everything is known now, and we have evaluated blood samples, and we are looking some specific metabolite that they can tell us different things about the metabolism of our human body, So, and also and the metabolism of the microorganism that we have in our body. So I'm looking some two specific metabolites. I'm working on bile acids and also in short-chain fatty acids. And that
a metabolite is that a fingerprint or a signature of your metabolism, or is it a specific molecule or a specific thing?
Yeah. Imagine that metabolites, for example, we can look some metabolites. To put it really, really, really simple, it's like we look for fingerprints, and those fingerprints are the metabolites, And knowing that, we can understand how the diet is affecting our metabolism.
Fingerprints in your poo, which, when you say it like that, sounds very wrong, but I guess it makes perfect sense from a science perspective. So we've spoken about these sort of quite practical, affordable, sustainable health interventions, and then we're talking about metabolics here, and this sort of future-looking research into looking at signatures of potentially healthy diets that scientists can assess. And I wondered, they seem to be operating at maybe slightly two different scales, or on two different time scales. One feels very immediate, and one feels maybe a future-looking thing. Is there anything you think these two worlds of research can learn from each other? Because I don't know if there's many people who have a career like yours that have kind of crossed over from one side to the other. So is there anything you sort of bring from one world to the other? Is there anything that you think one side can learn from the other?
Yeah, indeed, that is a really interesting question. You know why? Because, as you say, there's not many people jumping from one area to the other area. We are called crazy people sometimes, but but believe me, when you are in this kind of situation, the best things they are appearing, right? So definitely, I think from the side of public health, where I used to work at United Nations, or if you work in public health or NGOs, you have, when you are there, you are having the opportunity to see the real world problems from first hand. You know what is going on, and you have another view. You can see like the nutritional problems like directly from the source. You know what I mean? Like you can see where the problems are coming from. For example, while I was in WFP, like I had some opportunities, some missions in Ecuador, in Honduras, or like while I was there, there were problems, in Guatemala, which Guatemala has a really like particular nutritional situation. Imagine that the half of the population they are they have stunting. They imagine that the women in Guatemala, they are the shortest woman in the world. They are really small. Or like and you can see, like, for example, while I was there, like the 50% of the population of Latin America in kids, they have like anemia. And they are like, and that is like a problem that it can bring a lot of issues for the future. Or like the other problem that we are facing in Latin America, it is like we have something that is called double burden. Double burden is the coexistence of the undernutrition and malnutrition that call obesity or overweight. So, and this is having like a huge impact from the economical point of view. Like, for example, in El Salvador, which is a country located in Central America, like this double burden is having an uneconomical cost that is around the 10% of the gross product of the country. In the same case of Chile, like the double burden, like is cost yearly the 0.2 of the gross product. So as I told you, okay, I have the opportunity to see this problem as someone who was directly involved, right? But at the same time, when you are doing science here, for example, during my PhD, you have the access to have an incredible technology. You have access to make science, but ideally the science that you should have, that is my personal opinion, it should be science that it can be able to tackle these problems that they coming from the real world, and it should be applicable, But luckily, people from Imperial, they are doing that, like recently, like a couple of months ago, it was a paper published from someone of my group that it was published in Science, and they were capable through urine samples, in kids, to see if they were growing adequately to the charts, according to their age, right? And they took samples that they come from Latin America, they come from Peru, right? And that is fantastic, But at the same time, like I hope that people from the vulnerable countries of Latin America that they are living under the poverty line, they can access to this technology, and then we can reduce the gap between like countries that they can have a good technology to tackle their problems compared to the countries that we don't have this technology to tackle the real world problems that we are having. You know where I mean?
That's very interesting, because it links to the other question from, there's a bit of feedback there. We had a question from Cheng Yan, who asked, will this kind of research, which I think is related to your research at Imperial, will it increase the quality of life for both rich and poor? So it's quite interesting. It links to what you're saying there. Maybe initially, some things like probiotics, metabolics, personalised nutrition, they feel like some things that might, if they're going to come into place anywhere, it's probably more likely to be in the developed world. But maybe that study you mentioned there shows that there might be, if you work at it, there might be opportunities to learn and maybe influence more traditional food interventions for people in other parts of the world. Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And the idea is, at the end, I think academia and like the real world, like United Nations or agencies or NGOs, they should be connected, and they should like move forward together to tackle the same problems. Like the power of the agencies, NGOs, public health, they have their problems. They know what they are going on, But at the same time, the people from academia, they know how they can solve this with the newest technologies. So at the end, if they can combine this together and they can move forward to find a better solution, that will be amazing, because in that way, you can reduce the gap between like the first world and the third world. But I hope in some point that is going to happen. It's happening, but it should happen more frequently.
Okay, great. Cheng Yang, I hope that answered the question you had. I had one final question, and then I think we're going to, unfortunately, have to wrap up our discussion tonight. So I wanted to end on, if there's one thing, in terms of addressing sort of public health issues, maybe in Chile, maybe in Latin America, maybe more globally, if there's one thing you can think of that would make your job as a dietitian, as a sort of public health advisor in terms of diet, if there's one thing that can make your job slightly easier, it would be great to hear what that one thing might be.
You know, from the point of public health, I think there's a key thing that you can make the things easier. And I will say, like, it will be like political will, or the willingness to move forward in order to get to achieve the objective that you have, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that is quite important, like, because sometimes, you know, like, you can have the willingness to do things, but you need to have involved a lot of stakeholders in nutrition, especially in public health. You know, like, you can have the best science in your lab, but if you don't have the commitment of the politicians, you don't have the commitment of the academia, you don't have the commitment of the consumers, and so on, these projects, they won't move forward and they won't be successful. Like in Chile, for example, we have an experience that it has been tried to be replicated in other countries, but it haven't been successful like it was in Chile. And in Chile, I don't know, maybe if you know that in Chile, during the 70s, the nutritional indicators, they were worse than Guatemala. And we have a terrible indicators of nutrition. At least like the 50% of the population, more than the 50% population of the kids, they were undernourished. More than the 50% of the kids, they died before to reach their birth, like to become 5 years old, right? Mm-hmm. Because undernutrition, it was like the most common disease. The kids, they were dying for multiple conditions, but at the end, it was because they have an underlying undernutrition. So at that time, you know, in the government of Salvador Allende, it was implemented a program, you know, during this, I'm talking in the 70s, you know, mm-hmm. a program like beside of different stakeholders and a nutritional group from the Institute of Nutrition and Technology from the University of Chile, where I studied my master. You know, they implemented a program and they started to work together with the government of Salvador Allende. Later on, it was the dictatorship of Pinochet, you know, where many people die, and that is another story. But still, these people, they continue and they kept the continuity of the program to eradicate nutrition. They later on, we have democracy. And at the same time, these programs, they continue through the year, you know, and we have complementary food programs where it was meal given to the kids and so on. So my message here, it is like, when you are going to have a public health, you need to have continuity. You need to get the political will from all the interest people and stakeholders, and you might get like something successful. But I need to admit that there's not a recipe that you can replicate in every single place, because every single country is different.
Yeah, I mean, if Chile, in the, like you mentioned, in the political upheaval that it saw in the 70s and 80s, managed to keep a certain degree of continuity in terms of its nutritional program, and that had that impact, I'm sure other countries, there's no need to politicize this. We should be able to have some continuity of public health programs around diet and nutrition.
Now, the only problem from that, it's like we had the undernutrition and now we have obesity. We are one of the top 5 countries in obesity of the world, you know, and we have the and now, like, all the kids that they were nourished, they were undernourished. They say that now they are obese. So then you have like a duality, and that is something that now in Chile we are trying to tackle and fight, you know, and eradicate some point. But we know that is super complicated to fight against. Yeah.
It's an ongoing challenge, which is why it's so important that we have people like yourself, Jerusa, doing this work and continuing to sort of fight the good fight when it comes to what we're eating. And so, thank you. I think that's a good place to sort of draw the conversation to an end tonight. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. Thank you so much, Jerusa, for joining us and for talking us through your career and all. And I think there's been already so many interesting chapters. There'll be many more, I think, yet to come. Hopefully at Imperial, but maybe beyond our walls at Imperial College. Thank you also so much to everyone who was watching at home and sending in your questions. I do apologise if we were unable to get to any of them. I know we had quite a lot. We only had a certain amount of time. time. I will say that a recording of this discussion will soon appear on the Imperial College YouTube channel, so you can watch this again, you can share it with friends. That would be really helpful. Thank you so much for everyone who watched. My colleagues are also going to post in the chat a link to an evaluation form where you can let us know what you thought about it, which would really help us in terms of the public engagement team here at Imperial. It means we can organise more of these events. You know, it gives you a chance to suggest topics or themes that we might explore at future events. So please do take the time to fill that in. But if that's it, that's otherwise it. I think that's everything from me. As I said earlier, we'll be back tomorrow night with a discussion on the science behind the benefits, maybe challenges around vegetarian, vegan, plant-based diets. We're going to be looking at it from a health perspective, from an environmental perspective, all different types of perspectives. And we've got a chef with us to give you some recipe tips. So that should be a really good night. So yeah, for now, once again, one final thank you and round of applause, virtual round of applause to Jerusa. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good evening, everybody. And do join us on Imperial 8's online tomorrow night. Thank you very much, everyone.